not sure how long it's been. It's like you almost get used to just having like less people, but the more the merrier, I say. So I say we wait until about a minute and then we start up.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, we'll be about a minute by the time I finish reading this introduction. So, welcome to the October 2nd meeting of the Easton Planning and Zoning Board. This meeting is being held remotely over Zoom, and we have a few notes here. You can find more notes on page 2 of the agenda, which is on the town website under the calendar. So while the board members or commission members and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted and with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public can be recognized by using the raise hand function found under participants from Zoom, or make a request with the Q&A function. If you're joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If an applicant wishes to display materials, please make the request of the chair and email the materials to the board staff for sharing on screen. Otherwise, we actually encourage everyone that is an applicant to share their own screen with the materials that they have for the meeting. And as usual, this meeting will be recorded and broadcast live on ECAT, I assume, as usual. So we'll do a roll call. Let's see. Joanne Ziegman.
Here.
Amos Kadem.
Here.
Robert Stetson.
Here.
Mickey Wolf.
Here.
And Kathy Kidd, our new member.
Here.
Okay, Peter Deshane here. So the first item up, we have no continuances actually. No, we have one continuance here. That's going to be Morris Road. So if anyone's here for the duplex on Morris Road, you can, well, listen to us continue it now or sign off. So Stephanie, I know we talked about this quickly. Is the continuance for further work on the site plan and the proposed duplex?
Yes. Yes, in response to the board's question about the shared wall.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in that case, we just need a motion to continue to October 16th.
So moved, Stetson.
Kevin, second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of Robert Stetson?
Aye.
Amos Kadem.
Aye.
Mickey Wolf.
Aye.
Joanne Ziegman.
Aye.
Kathy Kidd.
Aye.
All right, great. Next is a continued public hearing for 523 Foundry Street special permit mixed use. WJA Property Development LLC.
Shall I read us in, Mr. Chair?
Yes, this hearing hasn't been opened.
Yep, yes, please go ahead.
Okay. In accordance with the provisions of Chapter 41, Section 81T MGL, the Easton Planning and Zoning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, October 2nd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. to be held remotely on the application received from WJA Property Development LLC for a special permit mixed use under Easton Town Code, Chapter 235, zoning section -56. Special permits in Appendix A2, special zoning districts. Table of use regulations, principal uses A5, mixed use, Furnace Village District, Depot Street Subdistrict, to allow a development that includes commercial and residential uses on the site at 523 Foundry Street, Easton, Mass. This meeting will be conducted remotely via Zoom. The virtual meeting link will be contained within the posted agenda at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting. A copy of the application and plan may be viewed on the town website. Peter Deshane, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome applicants. Please state your name and address for the record. You need to unmute yourself first. That's usually an option down. If you just move your mouse to the bottom of the screen, of the Zoom screen, you might see the mute and unmute button on the left. Sometimes it's just somewhere else. There you go. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry. My name is William J. Adams, and my business is 890 Broadway, Raynham, Mass. 02767. And I am the owner of this property, and I'd like to present some updated information. Since our last meeting, we have done some soil testing of the property in order to design a stormwater system that's required according to the Conservation Department. And in test pits that we did test pits all the way around the entire property, and we were able to find the best location was the right front of the property and the right side of the property. Also with these, with the water elevation that we that had determined where the structures would sit and approximately what elevation they would be. In doing that, we laid that out, which I will show you on a plan, and we started trying to accommodate all the comments from the previous meeting. Having two entrances with one lane around the entire building, and we had to rule that second entrance out because of the stormwater structure, the elevation of it, and the elevation of Foundry Street would create about a 20% slope, which the requirement is 2%. So that right entranceway doesn't work at all. So we kind of ditched that part of it. And then we also went and met with the fire department to talk to them about the dimensions and requirements for the fire trucks to get safely around the building in the event of a fire or an emergency. We talked to them about it, and they preferred the two lanes that we initially had. We also had an engineer lay it out with Walter that on the plan shows the radiuses, which I can pull up for you. Let me just put this over here, and I'll drop this on the. Do I put that? Do I drop that on the screen share?
Let's
see
do
that?
that. If you press the share screen button, and then if you share your entire screen, you'll be sharing the entire computer. You can just go to the right page.
So let's see. I got that here. Okay. Can you see that?
Perfect.
Okay. So this was the churning radiuses as designed by Walter, who's on there, and he could speak more to that if necessary. also what I wanted to mention was, the board wanted to see possibly shifting the building forward closer to the road, and eliminating the front parking spaces. In my opinion, those parking spaces are a necessity for those stores. I would not build that building or put those stores in if I didn't have parking in the front. On top of that, I requested and received a couple of letters from other businesses. One of them being White's Bakery, which has been around for 20 or 30 years. And I have those letters here if you want me to pull them up.
Moment, maybe could you please just share those with the planning board, with the planning staff, so that we have those for record as they were referenced, and we'll have our time to review those.
Yes, I did upload them, but I only received them this morning.
Okay.
So we can look at it. If you want to look at them at a later time, that's fine.
But yeah, I think we should have time to.
Okay.
Every situation is different, right? Like that White's Plaza is
Right.
a little bit different than I think what you have proposed here. So
both companies that I requested their opinions, which you'll see when you do look at the letters, both of them were in agreement. In fact, White's Pastry said that they wouldn't even consider the location if they didn't have parking spaces out front. Going back to that plan that we have,
I guess I just have a question about what you have right here. Right, what you're showing us here is kind of an overlay of the new design over the old design, right? So we can see where the old entrance was proposed, and then what you have proposed now.
Yes, let me.
Yeah.
So yes, that let me. You want me to put? Is that? Can you see that screen? Can you see that screen? Yes, you can. Okay. So I highlighted where the structures are for the stormwater, just so you get an idea of their location. They were there with a dotted line, but I just wanted you to make sure that you could see them easily. The other thing that's up front here in these parking spaces is that the ADA requires the handicap spaces be as close to the front door of the building as possible. So that's right up here up front. We may even have to put a second one on the other side. We also have the fire lane in the front. So if we were to somehow move this building forward and eliminate this area in the front and make it all green space, we really would be eliminating the access to the front from the fire department coming around, and also the handicap spaces. And it just didn't seem to work no matter what. We tried all different methods of trying to accommodate the requests or the suggestions, and we just couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, in a way I can understand how maximizing like the building space on the smaller lot can limit your options as
right.
far as the layout is concerned.
So I think that, the other thing was the amount of green space. We had talked about that before. I have the plan. We revised the plan for the concept, and I've added bushes in the front. I've added bushes around each island, and bushes in the back, on the back corners, instead of having the cement structures there. We do have a pergola in the front, and we have tables on the other side for people to sit out there. If we were to somehow move this building forward, that would move forward as well. And again, it wouldn't work. So we did try several different ways to accommodate this. And we do have 30% or more of green space. And all the similar projects that I looked at in town are all around 20%. And I know it's a different district, but I'm trying to show you with these renderings the amount of green space we have there. I think it's quite a bit compared to what other people put in. And I'd be willing to put more bushes in if they, if that, made it better.
Now, are these renderings that kind of a somewhat close example of what you're going to suggest for the
These
building
renderings
application?
are exactly based on the site plan, and these renderings are what I'm looking at for the landscaping. I don't know if the trees out front are the best idea or not. I'm not sure if that is or it isn't, but I know the trees all on the side and on the other sides are no problem. And I don't, maybe those trees do stay out front. I don't know. I don't know what the board's opinion of that is. It kind of blocks the building at the same time.
Yeah, maybe just if we can just kind of go back just a little bit, just because we have some new members here, and it's kind of the first public hearing that you have on some of the preliminary information that you provided before. Can you just give us like a quick summary of the actual project itself, as far as the residential and commercial component?
Okay, do you want me to have Walter do that, or you want
Yeah, sure.
Walter Hermano? Are you there? Walter? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so what was the question again? I'll see if I can.
Oh, just please give us a summary of like the commercial and then the the mixed use nature of this.
Okay,
this
so
project.
what I'm looking at with the size of the building that I have, I'm looking at potentially 4 or 5 storefronts. Smaller type stores. I have a potential bakery looking at it. I have a little breakfast shop looking at it. I have an office space that someone wanted to rent. Actually, the guy that drew the renderings, the concept, is interested in opening up an architectural office in there. So that's the kind of business that would be on the first floor. I think people would love to come there, grab a pastry or something, sit outside, mix and mingle with people, and I think it would be a nice thing for that area. The second and third floor, we're looking at around 6 units on the second floor and 5 units on the third, which would give us 11, with one of them being affordable. The layout of those units, we have to put an elevator in, and we also need to have sprinkler systems, and we need utility closets. So the way we're laying it out, we would have all of those things. We're hoping to put a basement in for storage, but now that we've done this testing around the property, I don't think that's possible. So we'd be looking to put some kind of storage for the people with the apartments, that they could possibly store things in, to have additional space that they might have had in the basement they will no longer have.
And would that be a separate structure or incorporated into this one?
No, it would be built into this structure.
Well, okay, thanks for that summary. I guess maybe we can see if the board members have any questions here.
I have a question, maybe Stephanie, maybe the applicant. Do we know what the plans are for sidewalk on 106 Foundry Street and how that is incorporated into this design, where the sidewalk might end up being?
So Amos, as I've mentioned to the board previously, the town is currently working on the pre-25% design phase for roadway improvements for Route 106 Foundry Street between Depot Street and Belmont Street. It will include sidewalks. And at this point, it's my understanding the sidewalks will be on the north side of the street. So where you see the green strip, and I think I can, let me see, I can do some.
Well, basically my question is, are they leaving enough room and they are considering the sidewalk there?
That's That's a good question.
So let's ask the
Meaning,
applicants
will
to go
there
back to
need to
the site
be,
plan.
I can check with the DPW if in that area, they would expect that there would be a need for a taking for the sidewalk. Is that your question, if I'm understanding correctly?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, there will be a
Uh,
sidewalk. It's not shown in this plan because they don't know about it. And I don't know what we know about it, but it needs to be thought through.
yep,
Yeah, it would be a shame to build that nice white fence and then have to, move it back
Right.
because of, yeah.
Well, I imagine if this will be a walkable neighborhood and
Right.
everything else, and there is a sidewalk there, I would like to see benches and things like that by the sidewalk, so the people that are going to the businesses there, especially the bakery, can sit down by the street and have a drink or something. And that changes the way to look at that. But maybe it's too early to figure out. They have a fence there. That's what they have.
Right, and the space between the street, I had a sidewalk on there before and we pulled it off. There was enough room to put a standard sidewalk in there and still have the bushes there and the fence. And they don't have to be exactly in that spot. They can be pushed in a couple of feet if they had to. There's plenty of room there.
Yeah, just I would say take that in consideration when you put the fence. You don't want to start pulling the fence off because they are laying out a sidewalk there.
mhm.
Yeah, and given that the 25% plans for the Foundry Street reconstruction are either ready, I think they're done. That should be something that we could look into and help you with and find
Yeah.
out.
I believe they're still in the pre-25%
Okay.
phase,
Mhm.
but I will talk to DPW.
Thank you, Stefan.
Mr. Adams, excuse me, how many parking spaces are on this plan overall?
I believe, let me pull it up. I believe, so it's, let me just.
It's in your zoning table?
I have it right on the plan. Let me. So the parking spaces, the required parking spaces are 37 and we have 42.
Okay. How many out front are you planning on?
I believe there's 8.
Okay.
It says the restaurant 13 requires, retail 10, multifamily 14, handicap 2 places, total 37. Yeah. You have 16 for the front, I guess. You count some on the side for them?
I have on the sides, I have, I think I have 12 on each side.
Mhm.
Yeah, retail it says 12, restaurant it says 16. I don't know how you count the 16. That's my question. It's probably adding on the side 8, 4.
Yeah, there's 12 on each side. Let me go back to that, zoning chat and. Restaurants. So I don't know, is Walter, can you hear us? So
Stephanie, do you see Walter as he's?
Yeah, Walter had indicated in the chat that he's having problem with his audio.
okay.
So I'm also.
So I don't know where we got the 16 parking spaces.
Yeah,
Uh,
I count 8 on the front.
Yep.
And I don't know if they include some, you say it does include what they call the handicap, so it's probably 7. Unless it's a double count. Do you understand?
Yeah,
Those
this, right,
Those numbers don't match.
right. So I don't know if he, so the 8 that's here in the front includes the handicap, right?
Yeah, but in the table, the handicaps are counted separately.
Okay.
So, well, that should be easy enough to clear up, you know.
Yeah, I can, we can revisit that for sure.
Yep, good catch though.
So we can count the total, and it's come to 42. I will assume, I haven't done that, is that some of these 8s for the restaurant are on the sides.
Yes,
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't think that really any of these are, you know, are like, you know, earmarked for different, you know, it might just be logical that the front ones would be for the commercial, and the side ones would be a mix of, you know, residential. I'm sure
right.
they could have some signage kind of like trying to direct people to the right spot, but usually when you share parking between uses, it's just kind of a balancing act between the busy hours of, you know, both.
Right.
I think the way you put it on the table is incorrect, although I count the total on the plan, not on the table, of 42 places. So the total is correct. The
Right.
way it's represented is wrong.
Right.
I'm sorry, Peter, Amos, what is wrong? Because I just counted if they indicate the number of spaces in the circles and that adds up to 42.
And that's exactly what I said.
Okay,
Oh, the circles are wrong?
no, they're not. Well, you have on your table, you indicate that there are 42 parking spaces.
That is correct. But if you look at the table, they have descriptions. And
Okay,
the description don't exactly match. What means they have 8 for the restaurant, whatever they, and some additional ones for.
Oh, right.
the-
Yeah, I see that the table is a key to like the number, the circle number is saying what those parking spots, what those parking areas are for. I see.
Right. I will go over that with Walter and get that squared away.
Yeah, squared away, but the total is 42. And according to what you are telling us, you are required to have 37.
You'll be 36.
Yeah, I mean, I think you should probably, you know, just maybe kind of clean that up a little bit, because, you know,
Yeah, I'll
you'll
make
most
sure.
likely have some like, say if the bakery does go in, you might have some bakery only signs for people, so people can pull in and pull out, right?
Right.
So that it would be good to at least kind of have that at least sort of somewhat
You
somewhat
want it to
set
be
up
right.
here
You
on
want
the
it to be
site.
right. You want it to be accurate. Right. I understand. Okay.
Um,
Chair, if I may, I have a couple questions.
yes, please go ahead.
So my first question is, I'm looking at the Google aerial image of the property, and sometimes these are outdated, so I'm not sure in reality how accurate this is. But I'm curious to know, on your renderings, it looks like the west side and the south side of the property lines, it appears to me like you're going to thin the vegetation that's there. So I'm curious to know whether you intend to, because there's quite a lot of privacy right now on those 2 property lines. So I'm curious to know whether you're going to keep any of it there, and if not, how you intend to ensure that there's, you know, that privacy kind of remains out of respect for the surrounding abutters.
Okay. Are you talking about the left side?
The left side and the back of the
Yeah.
property.
Okay. So on the left side, I had made a statement before that I would leave whatever is there now in existence unless you wanted me to remove it, but I would leave it there and I would add some landscaping to it and create a landscaping buffer. On the back side, I have trees along the back, and you know, there's woods there behind the building, directly behind it, that abut the Gaslight Village properties. And I don't know I mean, I could put a fence back there. I don't know if it's necessary yet. I would rather put more bushes and put arborvitaes all the way across that would, put a complete block of landscaping and fill it up with landscaping if possible. If
So
they,
what you could actually do is you could mark on the plan where you're going to leave the existing vegetation remains intact,
yes,
and where you have new proposed landscaping.
okay,
Yeah. So, Peter, can I jump in for a second?
Yes, please.
So at this stage, when Mr. Adams originally submitted his application, he wanted the planning board's kind of okay on the site plan. And before he proceeded and did complete engineering and designing of the site. So he still has a lot of work to do on the site plan and defining the buffers and everything. The buffer, so the planning board administrative rules and regulations require either a fencing buffer or a dense 15-foot buffer around the perimeter of the property. So those are all things that should be addressed if the planning board decides that this is an acceptable plan and layout for Mr. Adams to proceed with.
okay.
And signage, presumably Stephanie is part of that process as well. That would be indicated and reviewed. Okay, so I have no further questions then at this time.
Right, yeah, even if you think about the lighting, if we haven't even looked at the real actual proposed plan yet. We saw the layout earlier.
Right.
But we see a few light posts here, and this isn't actually even the actual plan. This is just a rendering. So yeah, we have quite a bit more to review. But until we sort of get the location and the concept down, that's I think we're still kind of hopefully getting closer to coming to some consensus on that.
So could I just make a couple of comments, Peter,
Yes.
about the plan? So at the last meeting, the board was really very interested in seeing the building closer to the road and probably a little more green up front and less of the paved area. In keeping with the idea of making this district more human scale, walkable neighborhood. So Mr. Adams had come back, he had responded to the board's comments by shifting this roadway, which didn't really do anything to reduce that paving out front. I had looked at it and I had wondered if maybe a one-way, so you had one-way ingress, one-way egress, so one way in, one way out, that basically was a horseshoe around the sides and the back of the building. But it was a single lane. You would be able to reduce some of the paved area. You'd be able to shift it down. I had talked with Mr. Adams about this because I wanted to know why they weren't moving the building down closer and what they had looked at and what they had considered, because that wasn't clear in what was submitted to the board. One of the things that Mr. Adams responded with was that they needed to get the fire apparatus around the building. I think that when Bill talked earlier, he mentioned some of the other physical constraints of the site, but I did talk with the fire chief myself to see if such a configuration would work for the road around the building from a firefighting perspective. And he said that could work for them, because what they would do in that instance, if they would be able to get around to the back, but if they needed to treat the fire from the front of the building, they would park along Foundry Street, which is what they do in situations in some of the residential districts where there's not enough room. They would just need to have enough, they'd need to be close enough to the building. The building would need to be close enough to the road for them to reach it with their ladder and the hose and water. So I think there are other constraints. Mr. Adams mentioned that he feels very strongly that the type of commercial use that he's trying to attract is indicating that they need the parking out front. He's talked about the stormwater, which again, we haven't seen the full design because this is still just the concept plan. But it really isn't because of fire that they can't shift the building.
No, right, it's sort of like the proposed uses, like the business use that makes me wonder if we should make him move the building up and eliminate one of those one-way lanes, one of the traffic lanes. But the board members, what do you think about the possibility of that, or do you think it would be better to allow the applicant and his potential uses to kind of decide on whether or not the parking in front is very important to them?
Stephanie, in your scenario, would that eliminate entirely the parking spaces in the front, or could both happen?
It would eliminate the fire lane in the front, and what would happen is the fire department would fight the fire from the road. And what they would need is, in that instance, the building would need to be close enough. And what the chief quoted to me was about 40 feet to be able to get from the road, from the edge of pavement to the peak of the roof. You need 40 feet to ensure that they could fight a fire from the front of the building. So yes.
If you turned it into a single lane at the front, it would increase the amount of potential for green space, but couldn't you still accommodate the parking there?
Well,
as a compromise between the two?
So what Walter was explaining to me is the amount of, so you still need, where you have parking, and especially parking on both sides, you need sufficient, I'm going to sneeze in a minute. Sorry. You need sufficient space for the cars to back out. And so he was saying that you'd really only lose about 2 feet there along the entire way. So it's really,
it doesn't sound like a huge gain in that sense.
No, that should be at free, right?
No, it's not.
Sorry. But that really where you'd gain more, and it's as much green space, it's as much as moving it more closer to the road, closer to a sidewalk when the sidewalk is eventually installed, giving it that human scale and a better pedestrian experience if you're walking down the road. And if you're trying to approach the building, you'd have a lot less paving that you'd have to walk over to get to the stores and avail yourself of the services there.
Right, and even possibly as part of that, that idea is that if you move the building closer to the road and then over to the right, which is east, because the one way would be kind of blocking off maybe most likely that eastern parking lot. It could still be there, but it'd be accessed by a one way, right?
Yes.
So, if you moved it over that way a little bit, then that would just kind of open up that whole, the back and the left for, some usable, either green space and of course, more parking. I mean, there really is 8 in the front, but and it would actually then that would create like the concept, I think, of like the availability of parking, right? Because people would see there's the building and there's a big parking lot right next to it, so there's plenty of space for me to park and go to that business.
Right, it would be more visible to people from the road with the building closer. You'd see that side parking there, and signage that would indicate that there's probably parking out back would be more visible from the road if the building were closer to the road.
Stephanie, in your communications with the fire chief, did he indicate to you that he requires like essentially a throughway all around the building?
No, he's what they would definitely prefer, they want to be able to get to the rear of the building. So you
Sure.
need to do that, but he doesn't need the roadway all the way around. I'm gonna share my screen for a minute.
Out front, it's a luxury, but it's not a necessity.
Can I?
Correct, correct. As long as the building is close enough that they can reach the peak of the building with a ladder and with the fire hoses. And again, in this instance, you'd need the two entrance, the dedicated entrance and the dedicated exit. So again, let me just share this for a minute. All right, you can see my screen. So my thought was you eliminate this here. And here we go. I'm gonna do this. You eliminate the parking and the roadway here. You have an entrance, let's say on the east side. I don't know which is better, east or west, but you'd have an entrance in here. People would move through. It would be a one-way, a fire vehicle. So you'd want to make sure the fire apparatus could get through. And then you'd egress here, you'd exit here. And it would allow you to shift the building further this way. So I think one of the other points that Walter made was that you may be able to recover some of your parking. You could potentially space it here and maybe, I mean, I really like their idea of outdoor seating and the pergola, but maybe they could shift that in a little bit differently.
And actually, that would in a
Again,
way,
those-
like, yeah, if we move the building a little bit too, that would kind of in a way kind of more like isolate like the residential like parking, right? Because you kind of say, okay, well, this is sort of like the residential
Yes,
side, and
yeah.
then this easily accessible larger area is more of the commercial side.
Right, but again, in order for this to work, you'd need this entrance here in order to get rid of the, eliminate the roadway out front. And what Walter is saying that based on the test pits they've done, he doesn't believe that you could do that. That one, you need your stormwater here, and that this is going to be, the grade is going to be increased. So again, you have a 20% maximum. I think it's not 10%. What is it? Walter's not.
The slope.
I know the slope, but I mean, so it would be a 20% slope, but it would be higher than what the board wants to see here.
Yeah,
I think it's
something
a
like
10%.
5% or
Yeah.
not 2%, right?
Yeah, so you don't want this steep incline coming into the property.
If there's a fire lane in the back of the building though, Stephanie, and you have the ability of an engine to get back there, why do you have to have the lane all the way around the building?
Well, you could have, are you saying that you have access both around each side of the building to get to?
No, well, I'm asking a question. I'm not saying anything necessarily.
Yeah. Well, I
The
think,
question is can, these fire trucks presumably can turn around, they
Yes.
don't have to, they don't only go forward. If you had,
yeah, as long as
situationally-
you could get close enough
It was a
on
turn.
either side
So
to,
to back up and turn around. I mean, my
Yeah.
problem with driving, having a design like this driven by, purely by fire access is that, it's not going to happen all the time. It's not going to be necessary all the time, but the building's going to be there permanently, presumably.
Right.
And, obviously we need to consider safety. That's important. But when I look at this plan, and it's the same kind of instinct that I had when we first saw it, and it really hasn't changed that much, which is that there's an awful lot of wasted space and a lot of
Yes.
concrete out front.
yes.
And if we can eliminate that in some fashion, I mean, that would be my preference.
Yeah. So, basically the chief, when I spoke with him, he said they're willing to look at ideas and designs from, you know, a safety perspective, but understanding that everything's not going to be, you know, the ultimate solution. It's can you fight the fire appropriately around the site?
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
The issue is for the fire truck to get around the back, they need that the 2 lanes for them to get back there. If you cut it to 1 lane, that's not enough for the fire truck to get in the back if you had a fire in the back of the building. So if you could get the truck up in the back and you're up here in this corner and you can't drive all the way through and go out, the truck would have to back up all the way around, all the way out the building. There's no real place for them to back up and churn and make the radius. These radiuses that are in here, we changed those to accommodate that truck driving all the way through. The fire chief said to us, if you could put this entrance in the other side, then that would be different. But even if you could do that and you eliminated it to 1 lane, in order for these people in the back to back out, they need space behind them. Eliminating this right now is 22 feet in the back. Eliminating 1 lane doesn't get you 12 feet. It drops down to 18 or 19 feet.
Okay, I think we need to, I understand what you're saying there, but I think we need to get some clarification from the fire department, because we're hearing conflicting, information.
Yes,
so
yeah, but-
therefore it's not the best, most efficient use of time, for all of us.
Right.
it
If
seems
Mr.
that-
Chair, if I may, too, I think it would be really helpful to hear next time for Mr. Hermano to have his his issues worked out, because while I understand what Mr. Adams is saying, my point is that you're going to gain if you eliminate all that concrete out front. You're going to have a lot of room in the back to play with, and I don't think it's necessary to remove the 2 lanes back there. But I think you're going to have an awful lot more space to consider kind of, you know, turning points and turning radiuses, particularly if you reconfigure the building. So I appreciate what Mr. Adams is saying, and I agree based on this current plan. Yeah, if you eliminate the lanes back there, you're not going to have very much space. But if you're moving the entire building forward, I think that could potentially really change this entire layout in a very significant way. And I would like to hear Mr. Hermano's point on that.
And I also say that I'm not going to build this building and put commercial stores in the front if I don't have parking up there. I've been doing this for 35 years, and every building that I own has parking in the front. If you don't have parking in the front, it sends a signal to people driving by that there's a business there and that they're open for business. If you don't have the parking in the front, then to me, it would be not economically viable for a business to survive.
You know, not to argue here, but I mean, does Aroma Joe's have much parking in the front, or is that side parking working for you?
Oh, the entrance to Roma Joe's is on the side, and the parking is right up to the entrance.
Well,
So the
that's sort of
entranceway
what
to
we
walk
were-
in the door
that's
is on
sort
the
of what we
right
were
side.
talking about. That's sort of what we were talking about, moving the building over to the right, which is to the east, and moving the building up, which would free up so much space right there on the left, the west, and the back, you know, for the apartments and for the fire engine to turn around and things. That it would be like, it would have the appearance of being like more accessible than Aroma Joe's, the way I look at it. But maybe I'm wrong there.
This sideline setback is exactly, so it has to be 15 feet from the parking lot. They're exactly 15 feet. So if I shift the building to the right, I don't know what that really gets me, but all it would do is eliminate the sidewalk, or it would make the parking spaces come closer together. And then they
you probably just have,
wouldn't-
but remember, you have way more space on the left, which is, you know, the left on the west, for parking. So you could possibly have just maybe 1 row of parking there on the east. That's
On the right,
moving it up,
eliminate
you
1
wouldn't
row
have the parking in the front, but you have lots more parking. You know, you'd have so much more parking, you know, on the west and on the north.
I think, if I may, I think the applicant If we could pull that picture up again, I don't know who was sharing that.
You want me to pull it up or Stephanie?
Yeah, I
wanna-
think that was your share.
Which one are you talking about, Joanne?
The one we were just looking at that disappeared. It was
Okay,
the,
sorry about that. I was trying to.
that's okay.
Let's see.
So while you pull it up, I think the applicant makes a really good point. I think there's pros and cons to either approach. So I think at the moment, the con in the plan that I see, which is why I was kind of going to ask about signage, but that comes later, is often when you have businesses set back from the road, people don't know what those businesses are as they drive by. So signage becomes particularly important in businesses that are set back from the road. If you have them closer to the road, then you have less need for signage, and it's more obvious to people as they drive or walk by that the businesses are there. What I'm wondering if maybe there's a compromise, and I don't know how feasible this is, but if we leave the plan as it is now, where the building is, and use that left entrance as both the entryway and the exit way, but once you hit the top right corner, for lack of a better word, that's a roundabout there. Oh, sorry, the bottom right corner. So basically you can't go all the way around. You can only get to that point where the cursor is right now, and then you'd have to turn around to go back out the other way. That would mean that you could use the existing right lot and the back lot for residential use, and presumably the main entryway into the residential portion of the building could be on either one of those sides. I'm not sure exactly where it is right now. And then you could use the left parking lot as it is for your businesses and make the business entry in the bottom left corner of the building. And you could even, depending again on what kind of businesses you're attracting, if there is a cafe or a bakery coming in here, that would then allow you to use that parking space that's there in the front instead as like an outdoor space, of which there's such a lack in our community and neighboring communities, for people to be able to sit outside and just extend an overhang so that if you walk from the left parking lot down to, for example, the 5th unit, all the way at the end of the building on the right side, at least you're covered if it's raining. So it becomes more walkable and accessible. You get the advantage of being closer to the street, having the outdoor space for people to enjoy the businesses, plus obvious in and out parking on the left side. And then the residents have to go further in to be able to access their homes. But that all kind of hinges on whether the left entrance is wide enough and that two-way road that's essentially a dead end is traffic-wise smart. And I don't know enough about that aspect of things to know whether that's crazy or not.
Okay, are you saying to eliminate like 6 of those spaces on the right?
No, so I'm saying basically leave the left, back, and right parking lots, as well as the building, exactly as is. But you can eliminate all of the parking and the road that's in the front. So instead of having traffic circulate completely around the building, you would essentially create a dead end on the bottom right-hand side. So if anybody wanted to go that far, then they'd have to turn around and come back the same way that they came in.
But would you lose those?
How would you
lots
move
to that?
so where would the parking be, Joanne?
So the parking
Would you keep the parking here?
No.
You'd eliminate that, but you would have.
And eliminate that road that you're pointing to.
Okay, right, and shift the building down.
You might not even have to shift it. If you create like outdoor green space sitting areas, for example, in the front.
Your point about seeing the building, this building is actually pretty well set back. And if you, the renderings that Bill was showing earlier.
It's pretty far off the road.
It's pretty far off the road, which again is another, I think Bob may have just been saying it, or maybe you. And I'd said it earlier, that if you shift this, I understand you want to be able to attract people. It's not necessarily parking that attracts people, it's what they see and what they know is there. And if you shift that building down, people will be able to see that it's there. And then you're right, Joanne, this could be green space where they have outdoor dining and stuff, but I think.
I think you would just have to rethink the access to the front of the building. So right now, it all hinges on these parking lots at the front existing so that people can then directly enter each of the 5 establishments. What I'm suggesting is if you rethink the access to those businesses,
So have
centered
them on-
around, centered around that corner, the left corner of the building, you use the left lot for your business parking, and then folks can enter all the businesses under a canopy, for example, that extends around across the whole front of the building in case it's raining or something. They can just, make that short walk over to the 5th building if they need to, 5th business, for example, if they need to. So it's still the parking is still very close to the businesses. And
I don't
the
believe that,
visibility is better.
I don't believe that the parking to the left I believe that's overflow parking for the businesses. I don't believe that should be the main parking. I mean, I won't build that building with this layout if they're not gonna allow me to have parking in the front. I mean, I'm just not gonna build stores that are gonna fail. And, maybe we eliminate I don't wanna eliminate the commercial, but maybe that's what we do. Maybe we just eliminate the commercial and make it residential.
Yeah,
It's
but
not really
we
what I
don't
wanna
just-
do.
Yeah, we don't just automatically approve, just, multifamily though anyway, so, we did one just based on the site constraints, but I think on this one, we should kind of stick with the,
Right.
commercial component.
And again, I don't think the fire department's gonna back around. If they drive 3/4 of the way around the building,
Oh, well, we can figure out, we can clear up the fire department thing, we've had conflicting information, so we just need to really get that cleared up, so we don't need to talk about what the fire department's gonna tell us
Okay.
anymore, since we've already did that and we don't know what they
okay.
exactly. But, so you're saying you will not consider moving the building forward and possibly to the right and eliminating any parking, is that what you're telling us?
I'm saying that doesn't flow properly. This was
Okay.
a well thought out plan with the proper radiuses, and I have to have parking in the front. So with the stormwater where it is, you can't put a second entrance in. If you could put the second entrance, then you could cut it down to one way. But if you did that, you'd only have 18 feet instead of
Yeah, I mean,
22.
I just don't know what else to tell you, because, we've had multiple, board members and the staff ask you to at least consider moving that building up. And
Yeah,
you've done it,
I
so
understand you. That's
do
what you
us
want to
now?
do.
Just-
It's feasibly impossible with that size building. And the other thing is, if you're standing on the sidewalk, the building's 37 feet high. If it's closer to the street, the building's gonna look like this massive building instead of a building set back in a natural surroundings of greenscape. And I mean, it just seems like it's a huge, an example of that is the buildings on Belmont Street in Brockton that Marion Development built. They're massive buildings right up on Belmont Street.
Okay, well, these aren't gonna be right up on the street, and you could do some screening if you want, but we're not gonna make you so that people can actually see, your businesses. And they're moving it up. We're not planning to move it right up to the edge of the road. We're just thinking about eliminating that parking, moving it up, and maybe having a little different design there, for the front area.
Right. I mean, we literally redesigned it 6 times,
Mhm.
and we moved everything
Well,
around to
well,
make
you only
everything fit.
You only really redesigned it because you had to figure out your test pits. If you had done the test pits in the first place, you would have known where things could go.
Well, I didn't own the property at the time.
So, I know, I'm just saying, yeah, so that's good that you've redesigned this, so now that you know the water table and you have different,
Right.
possible, stormwater locations,
We
right?
did
So
have,
that's
we
where we are.
we were allowed to dig 2 test pits, and we did establish the water table, but we didn't establish the good soil that's required for the stormwater system. And that we started over on the left where we did the other test pits, and we went all the way around the building, and we didn't hit anything good until we got around the building on the right, and then we went around front and we had all good material in the front. So
Okay.
that's, and they wouldn't let us do that prior until we bought the property because they didn't want holes everywhere.
Okay, so, what does everyone think we should do here? Should we ask, the applicant to consider, some of our thoughts and possibly, move this building up and possibly to the west, or what do you think?
Well,
No, I'm not, sorry, I'm asking the board members, not you.
no, I'm sorry. Okay.
I think I'm okay with the plan as presented. I
Mhm.
don't see a big, huge drawback besides the additional asphalt. That is impervious area, but if the drainage is okay and it's well planned, it shouldn't be a big problem. I think we are trying to impose a downtime look into this property, and we are not downtown. So, and also, if you look at businesses that are in street malls, for example, they are far from the street, and the people see them, and there is signs on those businesses. I don't think you need
So
to
you think,
see.
yeah, so you think we should just kind of stick with that concept, the one that is kind of like the usual, is kind of like a plaza type building, but put a
Yeah,
house on top of it.
and I think it depends what you do with that. It's good enough for the people to see. I don't think that's an argument. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep, gotcha.
Because if you go around near Aroma Joe, there is a street mall with how many different businesses set back, way back, with big parking lots in front. We don't want that look, but this is not what this is. So it is already a compromise from the point of your view. And I don't think you necessarily need to give this area, in my opinion, okay, the look of a downtown with businesses very close to the street without parking on it.
Yeah, I think just the opposite. I have to
Yeah.
tell you, I think that this look, and I am curious as to what the public has to say, because this look, it just, with all of the concrete, it looks more to me like connected to the strip mall portion of Five Corners that I think we would all like to see go by the wayside. And this is right next to that residential corridor. I mean, if the public and the neighbors are all okay with it, I might be able to get behind it, because I think we'd all like to see something there. But if I were a neighbor, I would say absolutely not. This
Oh,
is,
yeah. Well, that's a great lead in there. Let's go to any public comment here and see if any of the public attendees here have any comments on this. You can raise your hand, or if you're on your phone, press *9.
So Dale has his hand raised.
Okay, let's start with Dale then.
Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about the idea of having a mixed-use project here, as you know from some of my comments about other projects that ended up just being residential. And accordingly, where I was very concerned, I'm very concerned here that we do something in a way where we end up losing the benefit of the mixed use. I like the idea generally to have a win-win to the extent that you can have all of those mixed use and have something close to the building without the parking in front, but I am nothing if not a pragmatist on things. And I would further note that I really like the idea in sort of the corner areas of the front part of the building, which I think actually ameliorates to some extent some of the concerns about seeing parking spaces in front of the building. And I would further note that, Mr. Adams, when he did his project for Aroma Joe's, responded to public comment and ended up putting a little pad and some table and chairs out front. And I just drove by this weekend. It was really nice. I saw a father and daughter out there having some refreshments in front of it, and it adds to that vitality of the neighborhood. And I think in large part, that's what some of these corner areas can do. So the takeaway for me is I just want to make sure that we do not lose the idea of a mixed use part, because I think the idea of a pastry shop and everything else area would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. I sort of agree. Anyone else?
Yes, hold on one moment.
Hi, this is Mary Landry, 15 Pequonnet. I was wondering if maybe we could just do a few parallel parking spots in the front. It will eliminate the need to back out. It would bring the building closer to the road. It would solve both concerns. But I would also say I heard, I'm sorry, I don't know his name, the person who's proposing this plan, but I heard, he's been in business for so many years, and I understand that, but and arguing for parking places in front of a building doesn't necessarily guarantee successful businesses, because there's lots of strip malls with parking in front that are struggling to stay in business. So where the neighborhood is trying to establish an inviting feel, one that can, we're in a transition between the objective of past years with lots of access for cars and parking, to one that is more human scale. And I appreciate the board's objective to try to adhere to the overall concerns about the human scale. So I was just wondering if maybe you went to a one-way flow in the front and allowed for parallel parking, maybe that's where the handicap spots are or something like that. I don't know, but it's just a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's kind of when we're kind of making suggestions for the applicant to rethink their plan. Maybe that's something that they would think about, how that would fit into their idea of how this, this concept's going to work for them, right? Because they have a better idea of what businesses they're bringing in anyways. We heard a bakery. That's what we've heard so far. So we don't know, we can't plan this out exactly, to the T for them, but we can tell them what we think is a good planning ideas for this area. So thanks. Anyone else? Oh, I see a little more there.
So, Peter, I have someone else who has their hand raised, but before we recognize her, I'd like to read a comment from Denise Higgins.
Yes.
If that is all right. She lives in the neighborhood and thinks this is a wonderful conception of a buildingscape, loves the patio and portico. It looks like the residence is on Depot Street. I personally would like to see parking in the front because I want to see what vendor is inside.
Okay.
And I will allow Maria Wilson to speak.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead, Maria.
Maria Wilson, 16 South Street. I am excited about having businesses in that building. So I really hope that the board doesn't discourage this developer from having businesses there. Since the betterment went in, the storage went in, and the whole idea of the betterment was to attract businesses. Other than Aroma Joe's, we haven't gotten any businesses. And the fact that we get a bakery possibly is very exciting, because there used to be a bakery on 106 right near there, and it was a great location to walk to. So I'm just voicing my concern that we're going to discourage some businesses going in over parking spaces. I'm really hoping that we can work with him. And I personally like having parking spaces in front of the building. Where Subway is, all those parking spaces are always taken by cars, and then you park on the side, and a lot of times you just don't know, what businesses are busy or not busy. So for me personally, I like to have a parking space in the front, and especially if it's inclement weather and you have to walk a distance to go into the business, you might just skip over the business. So I would enjoy having parking spaces in front of a building. But I just hope that we can work with this developer. I like his plan. I like the look of the building. We've been looking at that empty lot for a long time, and I just really want to voice my opinion that we can work with him and give him some support. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. There were just a couple of questions in the chat here. Alice Micho from I'm asking if there's going to be a buffer of tree shrubbery along the border with Gaslight Village. I think we talked about the fact that a buffer is required, and we're going to ask the applicant to show which existing vegetation is to be left preserved, and what other buffers and vegetation are proposed for the entire plan. And I think there was one more. Oh, no, I think that was it. Stephanie, do you have anyone else there that wants to?
Nope.
All right, well, I mean, based on some of those comments and kind of different opinions with the board here, I mean, I think we could consider going forward with the site layout as is, and then just really do quite a bit of work, on the landscaping, the buffer, the outside areas for both the commercial and residential components, and give it back to the eventually to the architecture, and make this a good development. What does anyone else think as far as board members? Bob has expressed that he'd much rather have the building moved up. Amos had a little bit differing opinion there, and then the other board members had a few ideas that could work if we move the building up. But I'm not super opposed to what has been presented.
Mr. Chair, that's probably my opinion. It would be great if it can be reduced, the amount of asphalt, and bring it forward and put it closer. But the amount that you can bring it up, the amount of improvement is not. It doesn't justify for me to oppose this plan.
Yeah, we might be able to spend a little more time, and the applicant too, some more thought on what green space is proposed on the existing plan, and it can just kind of work from there, and make sure everything's safe and a good fit for the neighborhood and the business.
I would like to just say to the applicant, a walkable and friendly, human-sized neighborhood is something that we are looking for. So there are things that can be done to this building on the detail of your design, on the side where the bakery or someone else, there are places to sit down that invite the public to come in, maybe benches on the front, on the area where you have the landscape. And for once, I understand why you don't want to put the trees there, because that will block the view of the signs on the businesses.
Right.
What makes sense, but then on that place, make a place there that invite people to come to this area and walk and sit down and be in this area, like Aroma Joe's did on the front of the building at our request. So I am asking you to think about the thing and invest some effort and planning.
Okay. Can I?
Peter, could I just say one thing to add?
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate what Amos is saying. I think those are good points about making sure it's human scale and adding some of those details. If the building stays where it is, I do believe that at least a few shade trees at the road level would make a lot of sense. And again, it because of the setback, I don't think it's really going to detract a lot from the
No, I think, yep. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. And actually thinking about that, if you look at the rear of the property, it's just a 5-foot wide grass strip between the two-way lanes and the Gaslight. So that would be hard to, that would be difficult to reconfigure without moving the building forward a little bit, but which won't work.
I have a comment to that, Mr. Chair. This is a 3-story building, very tall. I don't know what type of buffer that you will do to totally block that from the Gaslight.
Well, supposedly vegetation can can reduce noise and kind of some
then I think the idea of the fence is a lot more adequate to really buffer this totally from the back. And in that case, you do both things. You do buffer with bushes up, and you put a fence, and that blocks the noise from the cars parking, the people. I think you might need both things because of the nature of this building.
Yep. might be possible to move the dumpsters somewhere else, but that might eliminate parking.
That's the reason I say fence and bushes. That's what you
Yeah.
need both.
Well, Mr. Adams, Hermano, if we go in that direction, do you have
I
enough
have one more
comments
thing
to work on? Yeah, go ahead.
to remind the board that the elevation of the road out front Foundry Street goes downhill
Mhm.
as it's going by the building when it's going easterly. So the more you move the building to the front, the higher the right side is going to be. The grass, instead of the grass being layered, it's gonna almost require a wall in the front. If you did move that building forward somehow, you would require a wall going around for the elevation to meet the
Mhm.
lower street level and for the stormwater to still work. Just something to think about. You
Yeah, I
understand
mean,
what I'm saying?
I think it would be a better project if we move it forward, but I'm not gonna just, not just gonna force you to do that if it's just not gonna work for you.
Right.
Mr. Hermano, do you need any more, would you like some more ideas here for, do you have what you need to, at least start working on the, the landscaping and the amenities and the lighting and the architecture?
And the buffering.
Yep, the buffering, the pedestrian access. Yeah.
I guess he has no volume.
That was a thumbs up.
Right.
Well, does anyone else have anything for this agenda item?
Well, what are we doing? It's a public hearing, right? Do we have to close the public hearing and presumably?
No, the public hearing has to stay open for a while, because they haven't given us enough information to close it, I don't think, unless you think so.
Well,
we keep the
What do we
public
need?
hearing open
Do we
for
need
another meeting.
what do we need the site plan in order to vote on the public hearing?
Right, you need, right.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
need a full set of plans. We're going to need to do stormwater review. You'll, again, they've shown renderings, but I would think you would want to see elevations,
Mhm.
actual architectural elevations showing the materials that they're proposing to use on the building.
Yes, you can see our, our rules and regulations for the plan requirements, please, and
Right, yeah.
contact Stephanie if you have any questions about that. And as soon as you're ready to dive a little deeper into the architecture, we'll be ready for you.
Okay.
Okay. Would you like to continue to the next meeting?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we'll keep this open and just show us what you have. If you have a question,
So,
yeah, Stephanie.
Peter, I doubt they'll be able to have
Mhm.
everything that we need for the next meeting. So my suggestion, just to be realistic, would be to have it scheduled for, I guess it would be the first meeting in November, Suzanne?
You mean like as far as like this, at least
Correct.
the stormwater process kind of started up, right? Yeah, not
November
just
6th.
yeah.
Right. I mean, well, there's no way by the next meeting, even if they, they don't have the plans yet, but if they did and they got them to us, we wouldn't have been able to start the stormwater review. Yeah, we need a little more time.
Yeah. Walter, is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Okay, that's a thumbs up too. Thank you. All right, so then in case we continue not to the next meeting, but to the following, the meeting following that.
November 6th.
On November 6th.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I think we need a motion to continue this to that November 6th date.
Joanne Zigmund, motion to continue to November 6th.
Okay.
Kevin, second.
All in favor, Joanne Zigmund,
Aye.
Mickey Wolf,
Aye.
Kathy Kidd,
Aye.
Robert Stetson,
Aye.
Amos Kedem,
Aye.
Peter Deshane, aye. All right, thanks for talking over that site plan with us. See you soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Next, we have a public hearing for community housing zoning, also known as MBTA communities, also known as MBTA zoning. And this is our first public hearing, so there should be a notice in the file to be read.
So Peter, I have a suggestion, and I should have realized this when we were putting the agenda together.
Mhm.
The two items following that should be very quick compared to going over
Yep.
the
I
formal
thought about that
opening.
too.
So maybe we allow those to come first. if the
Yeah,
board's so willing.
if they're here, are they here?
Yep, Ken Koska is here
All right.
for Barron Estates.
Yep, let's switch the agenda around here. Let's go to Barron Estates definitive subdivision. Ken Costa, board vote to recommend the select board for acceptance of the roadways. Oh, hello, Mr. Costa.
Hello.
Please introduce you as name and address for the record, please.
Ken Koska, 73 Crystal Springs Ave, North Falmouth.
Thank you. So the town's reviewed the roads, and you would like the select board to move this to town meeting for the town to accept the roads as kind of was their expectation for this subdivision.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, Stephanie, is there?
So we've had
share with us?
Patrick Brennan is our peer review engineer for roadway construction. He has been out to the site all during the roadway construction and utilities installation. He finds everything to be constructed in conformance with the approved plan and with the as-built plan that was submitted. And the action requested of the board tonight is to recommend that the select board recommend this to town meeting on November 13th.
Okay, but this is not actually, it's not really part of the public hearing because we're just talking about, well, we're not actually making any proposals for the town meeting. We're just recommending that the select board add that to the agenda for the town meeting.
We're asking to have the article placed on
Yeah.
the town warrant and to have the select board vote to recommend acceptance of the road.
Okay, does anyone have any questions on how that works or what we're doing here?
Don't you need a motion?
Yeah, if there's, well, check if there's any public comment, any hands raised, Q&A. I don't see any. Yeah, go ahead, a motion, please.
Motion to recommend Barron Estate definitive subdivision 18-128 Ken Costa to the board, select board for inclusion on the town meeting.
Second, Stetson.
Okay, all in favor, Wolf,
Aye.
Kid,
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Zygmunt,
Aye.
Gatum,
Aye.
all right, DeShane, aye. All right, that passes. Sorry to keep you waiting there.
Thank-
At least
No
we moved
problem.
up a little
Thank
bit.
you.
Yep, you're welcome. Have a good night.
Good evening.
Okay, the next out of order agenda item is Goodspeed Estates, Backcut LLC modification of subdivision decision. Is there anyone here for that?
Paul
Steph-
Crew is here for that. And while he's.
Unmuting now. I can start the video. Okay.
Hello.
Oh, good evening. I'm here for Goodspeed. I think we're requesting two different motions. The first is to found a de minimis or minor change in plan based upon what I'll explain in just a second. And the second is to allow that minor change to occur. As you probably know, pretty apparent subdivision, first flexible subdivision in town.
Oh. Mr. Prue, we lost you. I think we lost you completely.
So Peter, do you want me to explain what, while
Um,
we're waiting for
yes.
Mr. Crew to jump
Mhm.
back on? So, as Paul just said, they're seeking a determination of insignificant change to plan. The plan calls for, lamp posts at each of the properties at the driveway lanterns. And the regulations, the subdivision rules and regulations issued by the town require that those be hardwired. Due to some grading, it sounds like with swales, to do that would require some additional grading. And what Mr. Prue is asking for is that instead of hardwired, they be allowed to install solar powered lamps. They look the same as the lamps that were being proposed. They were included in your packet, so you could see those. I can show those if people want me to. And I would add that, is this something, if the board is amenable to agreeing that this substitution be made, that maybe that's something the board consider in the future as an alternative to the hardwired, considering we're trying to reduce fossil fuel consumption.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about it, I mean, if the purpose of, one of the purposes is to actually like make the roads way safer, then if the power happened to go out, then it seems like they would be safer if the lights stayed on. So sounds good to me. Does anyone have any questions or objections to that request?
So it would be two motions: one, to determine that it's an insignificant change, and two, to allow the substitution of the
And is
solar
this
power.
for the entire project, or just for a few of the
I believe it's for the entire project.
Okay, do we have that in writing somewhere? Or should we just, or do we want to just approve that? If people want to just approve it, and unless we can think of a reason why not to.
Stephanie, can you explain where it says that needs to be hardwired?
It's in the subdivision rules and regulations.
So shouldn't we change that and allow for?
At some point, yes, I think that makes sense. I mean, I don't know, we could do that.
So if we
tonight,
all
but
share
it's not
that
on the
opinion, that it could
agenda.
be an easy decision here for this one small project. And then that would be something that we can consider over the next few months to update the rules and regulations as far as the hardwired lamp post requirement is concerned. And and maybe look at other things too, right? So but for this actual Goodspeed Estates with allowing solar lamp post, does anyone have any more questions or comments, or maybe a motion to approve it?
I just had a question. Are there folks living in these houses already, right?
Yes.
Do they have any input on what lamps they get?
Well, good question. Well, if they're living there and their lamp post isn't installed yet, hopefully the builder would contact them, right? If it's vacant, then I assume that the people that eventually buy it might ask what type of lamp post it was, but it's a good question. The applicants doesn't seem to be available.
Yeah, he hasn't come back on the.
Yeah, the other question, Mr. Chair, is okay, solar power lamp post. Are there any technical specification and requirement that we should be focusing? Because you can put something that has very short life or very short battery life.
No, I'm not. Okay, well, I'm gonna try.
So it should be something according to some standard or something that says what do you need for that for this type of.
Good. Might at least be like the lumens or something else, right? Yeah, at least how bright it is, right?
Yeah, we need a little more. Someone needs to get a little deeper to see that what they put there really serve the purpose this neighborhood.
Yeah. Right. Like say like on a cloudy day, will the lamp post produce as much light as the typical electric model? But then we have to see what we require for a regular lamp post in the first place.
Yeah, they have sensors and they have a battery. Maybe the battery needs to have a size that if there are 2 days without light, they still have a light. So I don't know enough to tell you. I'm just saying that the engineering spec and the requirements for this light should be something that someone needs to look at.
So, Peter, the description on the spec sheet indicates that the Lutag LED solar post lantern, it has the latest generation of premium monocrystalline solar panels. They convert the rays, stores up to 8 hours in the lithium battery. It says perfect for patios, pool areas, backyards, and decks.
Okay, yeah, then that kind of brings up a good point as far as, if the homeowner is going to own it and then the battery dies and the battery costs $300, do people just stop buying batteries because the batteries are too expensive? Whereas most likely, if we're hardwired, someone would probably just replace a bulb eventually, even if they put it off for a while. And that kind of goes back to Kathy's question about, well, do the homeowners know what they're getting into here with it, with a slightly more, possibly, more advanced technology than just a hardwired light. So
what I can tell you I have seen is the solar panel is relatively small. The batteries are relatively small. So 8 hours, I'm surprised, but you need a little more than that for a light that is in front of your house. If you want a light, right?
Well, if these are, if they're valid concerns, and if we want to wait for the representative to return, we can just keep this open for tonight, and maybe he'll come back and talk about it. It's either that or approve or deny it. Those are the options.
Well, they need to go to the. They have a limit on time, Stephanie. Do you know?
I'm sorry, Amos.
Can we postpone this until he can figure out the answer to that question? Are the people, are the neighbors, or the people that are going to get these lights agree with that? What we're getting, or they have something to say? And second, what are the specs? And I think this person needs to give the people what they are putting in and what are the requirements, the technical specifications, so they know what they are getting.
Yes, we can communicate that and ask Paul to come back and address those issues. Okay. Peter, if that.
Also, Stephanie, I'm wondering, so in their letter, it says that it would be impractical and complications would be associated with it being a protected wetland area. I'm wondering how valid of a concern that actually is. As far as I know, installing an electrical wire for a lamppost, even if it is a protected wetland area, generally isn't a problem. But
I think what
I'm not familiar with
need to do is they would need to come back to the Conservation Commission if this is outside of the area that was approved for disturbance under their current order of conditions. They would probably need to go back, and it would be a similar process to have the Conservation Commission determine if it's an insignificant change or if they need to modify.
This is where we need the applicant, right? Because if we ask them to show us the site plan, then we see from the site plan that the wetlands on one side of the driveway, and then like the front yards on the other side. We say, okay, well, if we were to make you stick with electric, with hardwired, well, just put the lamppost on the other side of the driveway where there's no wetland, right? So I think we sort of need them here to explain what they need to accomplish as far as the affected properties, and then how that applies to like the whole project as a whole, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if we have time tonight and Mr. Prue can come back, that would be great. Otherwise, we'll see him at the next meeting that he can attend. So seem like a okay way to handle that, everyone?
Yes.
All right, good. So let's go back. Going backwards on the agenda, back to community housing zoning. And we should have a public hearing notice for that.
The Easton Planning and Zoning Board will hold remote public hearings in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 5 on Monday, October 2nd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. virtually via Zoom to consider the following proposed amendments to the Easton zoning bylaw, Chapter 235 of the Easton Town Code and Zoning Map as follows for the 2024 annual town meeting or act in any other manner in relation thereto. More information, including proposed maps and proposed zoning language, is available on the Planning and Zoning Board's webpage and on file with the town clerk at the Planning Department. A link to access the virtual meeting may be found on the calendar on the town website. Article, Community Housing Overlay District and Zoning Map Amendments. To see if the town will vote to approve certain amendments to the zoning bylaw by adding a new Section 235-40 Community Housing Overlay District, Section 236-60 Definitions, Dwelling, Multifamily, and amend the zoning map pursuant to MGL Chapter 40A, Section 3A for MBTA communities to include certain parcels identified on the zoning map or take any other action in relation thereto. The following areas are included in the proposed overlay district: Eastman Foundry, Washington Belmont, Washington North. However, the number and locations of parcels may change during the course of the public hearings, and additional locations in Easton may be considered for inclusion in the overlay district. This notice is also available at masspublicnotices.org. Peter Deshane, Chair.
All right, thank you, Robert. So as a lot of our board members and probably the public know, we've been considering different zones in Easton that would comply with the new state requirement that we allow some as of right multifamily, given that we are a community which abuts an MBTA, access like transit. So we've been working on moving towards that goal to put together something that seems to work for the town and can satisfy the state's requirements, without going a little too far. So as a part of that, we've had a few pretty formal meetings, in the planning board with the public input. And at this point, our objective is to create the zoning and the zoning, the zoning areas, and a proposal that the state can review. The state would then review that, give us some comment, and possibly for the spring town meeting, that would go to town meeting for a final vote. So right now, Stephanie, as we talked about, we're working on a proposal that the state can review, right?
Yeah, so because this is really the official opening of the public hearing, I thought it made sense to kind of go back for members of the public that are here tonight and people who will be watching this on ECAT, the recording, to go over what the zoning is and the steps the town has taken to date. So I have a little PowerPoint. So wait a minute, I need to share my screen first, I think.
And we are going to have a public information session next week. So you might see some overlapping materials, but if you attend everything, you'll probably see some new materials too.
Okay, can everyone see this slide, community housing zoning?
Yes.
Okay. So, let's see. We haven't done this in a while. So what I'm going to talk about is the legal framework that actually created the MBTA community multifamily zoning requirement. Kind of go over understanding what those requirements are and what it means to the community, what the town's initial compliance actions were, and then, as Peter mentioned, talk about the potential areas under consideration for the district. So I think one of the first questions people have, or they ultimately have, is what is an MBTA community? And it is one of 175 municipalities in the state that either host an MBTA facility or they abut a municipality that hosts an MBTA facility. And this is a designation that is determined by state statute. So if you're part of an MBTA community, there's actually mass law that defines that. The zoning, which is add section 3A to chapter 40A, which is considered the zoning act, actually requires the MBTA communities establish a by right multifamily zoning district. And the impetus for this within their community. So the impetus is this came out of the Economic Development Bond Bill from 2020 that was signed into law by Governor Baker. And it is a requirement that comes from the fact that housing production in Massachusetts overall has dropped dramatically since the 1960s, but you can see even from the 1990s, from this first chart showed here, whether it's multifamily production or it's single family. And it's not keeping up with the demand in the state for housing and also affordable housing. We've also seen a significant rise in home prices over the course of the last 20 to 40 years. Which affects home ownership and also affects the ability to see developers building housing. So when we're talking about multifamily zoning by right, if you look at Easton zoning, multifamily is allowed within the business district by right, but you have to have 60,000 square feet of land. And you can have up to 3 dwelling units, but you can only have a maximum of 3 bedrooms on that 60,000 square feet, which essentially makes it economically infeasible to develop multifamily zoning. And Easton's not unique in not having by right multifamily zoning. So what the guidelines required that were promulgated by the, at the time, Department of Housing and Community Development in response to the regulation, the statute is that MBTA communities must have a zoning district that allows multifamily housing by right that's a minimum of 50 acres in size in total. You can have sub-districts, but at least one of those sub-districts has to be 25 acres of contiguous land. And none of the sub-districts can be less than 5 acres. It has to be suitable for families. It can't be age restricting. It needs to have a capacity to allow up to a minimum of 15 units per acre in gross density, both legally and practically across the district. And it needs to equal 10% of the total housing stock. So the district needs to have a capacity to support 10% of the town's total housing stock as of the 2020 census. And in Easton, that number is 9,129. So Easton is required to be able to accommodate 913 units in total. And it should be, if you're in a community that has MBTA facilities, your district needs to be within a half-mile radius of that facility. If you're not, like Easton, we're considered an adjacent community. We don't have a train station or a bus station within a half mile of even our borders. So we're considered an adjacent community. We're charged with looking for areas that are within areas that are consistent with sustainable development principles. The by right means that a developer can construct a project without having to get a special permit from either the planning board or the Board of Appeals. You can impose site plan review, but it cannot deny a project or impose any conditions that would make it infeasible or impractical for the project to proceed. So it really primarily focuses around vehicular access and circulation, architectural building design, screening of adjacent properties. Oops, sorry. The zoning district can require an affordability requirement. It can require mixed use, residential, commercial, and it can include already built multifamily areas. So, which is really kind of a moot point, because the zoning, and we'll talk about this, but it's not a requirement to build. It's not a requirement to change what's there already. The underlying zoning remains in effect, but the multifamily district zoning gives a developer the ability to develop multifamily by right. So another point I wanted to make, the affordability requirement under the regulations, the maximum percentage that you can require is 10%, unless you do a fiscal feasibility study, and it proves or demonstrates that your district could accommodate a higher level of affordability, but no more than 20% of the units of a project. And the mixed use, again, the development still, I'm sorry, I'm doing this. Still needs to be able to accommodate the minimum density requirement. So generally what you do is probably use this as a density bonus. You'd allow maybe, say, an extra story on a building that would ensure that the project could support the commercial aspect, but also would meet the 15 units per acre of the multifamily. So the guidelines were issued in December of 2021, outlining exactly what was going to be required of communities in developing their zoning. And they notified the select board or administrative boards of the different communities. And in order to stay at least in interim compliance, an important point that I didn't cover, I'm going to take a little step back. An important point I didn't cover was that communities that aren't in compliance and don't adopt this zoning will become ineligible for certain state funding programs. So in order to stay in compliance up to an adoption period, the state charged the executive branch and administrative branch of the town to conduct a briefing session to go over what the requirements are, review them, have some conversation about it. We did that for the select board back in January of 2022. One of the outcomes of that was that they appointed the MBTA Community Zoning Implementation Review Team. This team was charged with reviewing the regulations, understanding them, developing comments on behalf of the town to submit. These were draft regulations. There was a comment period, raising questions to seek answers on. There were a lot of questions about the affordability and the mixed use that came out of the comment period. And one of the things they did as they deliberated and they considered the zoning was that they developed guiding principles and goals for the district. These principles and goals were consistent with a lot of the goals that the planning board established for the Furnace Village District and the Queeset Commercial District. Talked about walkable neighborhoods that were close to amenities and services. They talk about leveraging the good work that Easton has done already in increasing the diversity of its housing stock. It talked about protecting the commercial areas and also open space. They also identified as a preliminary, 7 potential areas that could be considered for the district. And the board has talked about some of those in the past. And then they prepared an action plan for zoning adoption and submitted comments on behalf of the town to the Department of Housing and Community Development. One of the questions that gets asked is why should the town be working to comply with this regulation? And there are several reasons. One, it's going to help Easton achieve its housing goals to meet its housing needs. I mentioned just a minute ago that Easton's done a really good job of identifying what the housing needs are in the community and working, whether it's through zoning policies or it's working with developers on friendly 40B projects to increase the variety of housing stock in the town. It specifically can help achieve goals that were identified in certain of our planning documents. The Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan for 2023 through 2027 identifies increasing availability of affordable housing options for families and older adults and maintain existing affordable housing units as a goal. It will help increase, promote diversification of housing choices. And one of the priority initiatives out of the housing production plan was ensure more housing that's affordable for seniors and families as an outcome of the implementation of the multifamily zoning. Also in the Envision Easton Master Plan, one of the goals is matching opportunities for housing with the needs of all Easton's residents. The demand for multifamily housing does exceed existing capacity. Up until, so prior to 1990, Easton's number of multifamily dwellings totaled around 283 units. Since 2012, Easton has added 709 units of multifamily housing. Of those 702 units, all but 30 were the result of either a friendly 40B comprehensive permit, the 40R Queeset district, which was a zoning district adopted by the town, or our age restricted living units. All the existing multifamily that was developed since 2012 is all functioning at capacity occupancy rates, which would be an indication that the demand for multifamily housing is pretty strong. Another reason, increase more affordable housing options. Easton home values have increased dramatically over the past 5 years. This chart shows you that between 2019 and 2022, housing values, I'm sorry, I keep clicking on that. Housing values in Easton have increased 34%. And while that is very beneficial to the property owners. If they're staying there, they're living there for a long period of time, they have that added value in their home. But it makes it very costly for people who are looking to buy houses. And if people are looking to downsize, your seniors selling their house, they may realize a large gain over the years since they bought it, but now they have to find a house that they can afford to live in, and that's becoming more and more difficult. The same for the working class, young professionals, and new families that are looking to move to Easton. I mentioned earlier that one of the links to compliance in the statute is that communities that don't comply won't be eligible for certain state funding. Easton has benefited significantly from that funding. These come in the form of the MassWorks grant program. There's a housing choice program that helps communities fund infrastructure programs, planning programs. And you can see from this chart here, since 2011, Easton has received $5.6 million in funding towards certain projects. One of the most significant being the Five Corners Sewer District. That funding helped reduce that projected betterment down to something that was much more palatable to the residents. The Lincoln Street sidewalks that were constructed last year were paid for through some of those funding programs, and the Foundry Street roadway improvement design is being funded by some of those same programs. So there's quite a bit of funding that the town has benefited from. And not least, that it's the law, and the Attorney General has issued an advisory that all MBTA communities must comply with the law. Failure to do so may subject the community to civil enforcement, and the law really does not provide a mechanism that allows a town to opt out. Some of the key dates for adopting the zoning: everybody, all the MBTA communities have to adopt their zoning by the end of 2024. So we're looking to move this to town meeting in May of next year. We have our first public input session, which Peter mentioned, coming up on the 11th of October, and there will be subsequent public sessions for input from the residents of Easton. We will, at that meeting on the 11th, we expect to have those dates laid out. The planning board is looking to have a solid draft of the regulations to it is now, I mentioned the Department of Housing Community Development. That department is now an executive office under the governor, and it is the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. They need to review the zoning and approve it, and to ensure that what gets voted at town meeting is going to be in compliance with the regulations. The board, the Office of Housing and Livable Communities requires 90 days to review that. So we're looking to have a solid draft to submit to them on the 6th of November of this year, in order to ensure that what goes to town meeting will, and if it passes, will be approved finally by the HLC. So the planning board hearing will still be open through February of next year. to continue to take in public comments and feedback. And then once that's closed and the article gets voted by the select board to go on the warrant and gets recommended, it will go to town meeting on May 20th. So Peter, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about where the planning board is at right at this moment.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think you just kind of summarized it. So, as you sort of kind of brought up, is that we have a draft of the zoning bylaw, which will be associated with this this new zones, and then we have the planning board, as well as kind of a group the selectmen put together in the form of public hearings, have some ideas on the best locations for these MBTA multi-family as of right zones. So here, Stephanie, you can kind of go through and give us an idea of the parameters for the zoning if you want.
Yeah.
Stephanie.
So what sorry. So in order to comply with the zoning, but still kind of define what the dimensional requirements are and what the development in the zones should look like, the recommendation is that front yard setbacks be 30 feet from the road, that side and rear yard setbacks be 25 feet. There'd be a minimum of 30% open space. The maximum dwelling units allowed will be 15. The maximum floor number of floors will be 3 with a 45-foot height maximum and 2 parking spaces per unit minimum. And there will be no restriction on the minimum lot size or acreage. And the feeling there is that if you have dwellings and buildings that meet the setback requirements, that you'll have a reasonable massing on the sites. 3 sub-districts are currently under consideration. We've referenced them and I'll show them in a minute as Eastman Foundry, Washington Belmont, Washington North. Eastman Foundry seemed to be a suitable site. It meets the minimum requirement of at least one of the sub-districts being 25 acres, 25 contiguous acres. It has access to municipal sewer. It's walkable to a variety of services and amenities. You have a Target, there's the Big Y shopping, grocery store, there's shopping and retail, some food service, there's a Starbucks in that area. It has a low probability for near-term redevelopment of the large retail parcels, so it effectively paces any redevelopment in that area or new development. The total capacity assures compliance with the 10% minimum unit capacity of 913, and it demonstrates an ability to accommodate higher density with commercial use. And that was a big thrust for our focus for the planning board, was again being able to accommodate that mixed use and kind of protect our commercial assets. Belmont's, Washington and Belmont is a 20-acre area, and it meets the minimum requirement. It also has access to municipal sewer and outdoor passive recreation areas. That's one of the other benefits of Eastman Foundry. It's right near the New Pond Dam, and then once the sidewalks go in down Foundry Street, you can walk down to the old pond conservation area and the Swiss Park once that's redeveloped. And then Washington North is the area around Roach Brothers. And this would be particularly attractive in the future. It's a prime location if the South Coast Rail ever does move forward. And at that point, the town would be required to have one of its districts located within the half-mile radius of a transit station. This is the Foundry Eastman area. You can see we have the target here. This is the big Y and the other commercial businesses. Avalon is here. That is just under 14 units per acre of multifamily housing. It gives you an idea of what the density could look like.
So Stephanie, that's where you can kind of point out where, like, Avalon and Target and Big Y are actually like part of this zoning, right? And that's where
correct.
It's not realistic or probable that Avalon is going to become redeveloped with with a different version of multifamily than it already is, because it's already like the most valuable property in town, right? So
right,
it's highly unlikely that anyone is going to redevelop Avalon anytime soon. And
right, exactly. And that's
there.
their business model. I mean, they are long-term holders. That's how they build.
Mhm.
They build and they manage their own properties once they're constructed. And
Right. So for the most part, we're not proposing like vacant land that could be more readily buildable, like, immediately, right? It's more, this would be a really phased.
correct.
really
You
phased
have
process. Mhm.
these parcels here that could be
Mhm.
developed, but again, this is it's
Yeah, but I mean, if we have, since depending on what, the board members and the rest of the town think, if we wanted to exclude that, undeveloped land, we have plenty of we have more like spots available here under our 3 maps than we need, right? So if we wanted to cut that one out, then no problem. We just say cut that out and it's gone. I mean, I won't argue.
well,
with
we'd still have, yeah.
Yeah, no, we still have enough. We looked at that, right?
We'd have to make sure this can still comply. There's a complicated compliance model, and this is, the board is well aware of this. A complicated compliance model that you run it through, you provide the parameters for your district, you provide the acreage, and it goes through, it looks at whether there are wetlands or restricted lands that could not be developed on. And then it determines based on your parameters whether the district can meet the 15 unit, the 15 per acre minimum.
Right, but in this case, I mean, it's pretty much, there aren't really any wetlands, so it should just be linear, right? I mean,
Right. But I think this, and any of the board members can speak up, but this area meets a lot of the goals of the planning board for mixed use.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I'm
Neighborhood
showing. I'm
like-
just pointing out that we still have some options here, right? And,
Yeah.
Okay, can move on to the
Then
next.
we have,
I'll go ahead. You want to explain?
I'm still trying to figure out what I pressed to go forward, sorry.
There you go.
All right, this is the Belmont Street, Washington area. The landmarks that would be familiar to people. This is the marketplace, which is really a highly underutilized property. This is an industrial manufacturer, which again, based on conversations, they're not likely to go anywhere soon, but this could be part of the district. And then over here, you have Belmont Arms, which has 30 units in total. So you have these 2 buildings, they have 30 units in total of multifamily housing. And this seemed like a reasonable location. The sewer does run up, it doesn't run all the way up, but there could be the potential for extending that line at some point.
Okay, are there any questions, board members here on thus far on the maps? Or we can move on to the next one.
Yep. And this is North Washington Street, or the Roach Brothers. This is Roach Brothers Plaza here. You have some townhouses or condominiums here that are pre-existing. And some medical and business offices here with some commercial along Washington Street. This is the CVS there.
And this one is, once again, pretty much fully built out besides the, kind of the
It is
back, which is either wetlands or for stormwater management.
stormwater, right, pre-existing
So
stormwater.
this one, it would be more likely, if anything were to be developed, it would be the front kind of parcels there, or well, possibly across the street, or like right in the front, like maybe like those plazas, right? But one's CVS, whereas, so that's not all that likely.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the public information session is, as I said, Wednesday, October 11th, that's next week at 7 o'clock via Zoom. We'll be posting the agenda probably tomorrow. And then, so the Zoom link will be available from the town's website on the calendar page. And is also, we have a link. If you go to this URL, it will bring you to a page we have dedicated to the MBTA zoning.
So Stephanie, look, when you looking at, I think it was the chart of the 3 zones, and then the with the model calculated where the density or the maximum number of units. Does Foundry satisfy the entire requirement? Or is it not enough area?
It does. Yes.
So Foundry as is satisfies the entire, like,
Yes.
whole thing. So unless the model has some sort of like real like hitches that I hope no one would ever throw in there to like mess every town up, you could eliminate part of this and use Belmont or part of Belmont and or the other end or North Washington, and kind of cut it all off right at the target property line there. I mean, we could. It would have to work unless the model is complete disaster. I mean, you know, without lack of a better term there. Is that like a reasonable guess that that's how that would work with a model?
Can we go back to that chart that you had, Stephanie, that shows the numbers that Peter was talking about?
Yep.
Because Wayne was still working on the numbers. If you remember last time we met, Wayne was still working on those numbers. And I don't think we expected them to come out as high as they did.
Well, this was, so you'll remember Foundry's, Eastman Foundry, the first map that we were looking at included properties on the south side.
Oh, yeah, I know, but yeah, that's still
That
pretty.
area,
Okay.
so we took those out. And I think with those, it was another 30 acres. It was something like 98 total acres.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think the numbers here kind of show that it's, well, it's kind of a burdensome requirement for all these towns. It's not like a huge thing like that affects the, every, every part of
That's
it.
right. It's not going to affect, it's not going to change the character of the town. By allowing multifamily by right in these districts.
Yeah, so looking at these new numbers, whatever, does anyone have any other kind of thoughts there on that, or like how that affects the direction we've gone in and where we should go with this as far as the zoning map is concerned?
I think your points make the most sense, given the feedback that we've heard up to this point, about, kind of the Target Plaza there. Maybe we take some pieces out of there and stick with Belmont. Kind of those were the 2 most ideal that we had looked at from the beginning. And, then maybe we can get some kind of consensus. But I think what you mentioned makes some sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, we should wait for the information session and see if people's ideas are close to ours or way off, or if it's just all over the place, and then kind of move on from there. Amos, do you have any other ideas? I know you had some different kind of feelings there when we started reconsidering North Washington. No, is there silence? When you don't have any more ideas, or that you're eating? Okay.
I'll just say really briefly that I like the flexibility of the 3 different areas kind of around town. I think it offers a lot more flexibility kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I like the flexibility too. We just don't need all that. We don't need that capacity, right? So
Well,
it would either
so-
be like cutting Eastman way down or, yeah.
So Peter, when you say, the town doesn't need that capacity, or the board doesn't need that capacity, you don't need all of those districts to comply with the zoning. I think the question is there benefit in, allowing within those districts specifically, this level of multifamily by right to meet a housing need in the community?
Well, personally, as a almost 47 or so year resident and the planning board chair, I don't think it's in the town's best interest to overdo this, just because the state made a law as part of a COVID relief bill. But that's my opinion. Just one person of 20 whatever thousand. So
Mr. Chair, I'll just say maybe like if this were to go forward, I like a lot more thought put into it. I'll be blunt, it's 8:45 at night and I'm having a hard time kind of thinking out the whole scope of stuff.
I'm with you.
But with that, I think that there needs housing needs need to matter, not just the minimum compliance. And I want to make sure that there's enough flexibility that if the state changes something in the future, we don't have to go back and like flip everything around again because we've cut it so close to the wire that we don't have that flexibility.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. That we want to make sure that we have something that that the state will approve and that would pass the town meeting. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mick. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say quickly, I agree with both Stephanie and Mickey's points, but I do have a concern that if we try to leave ourselves too much flexibility, that the residents are going to oppose it and it's not going to pass town meeting. That's my only concern, because I tend to agree that this is a nice opportunity for us to consider housing needs and really add some by right zoning, which is something that I'm generally a fan of, I think, as most people on this board know at this point. But I tend to agree that with Peter, that if we overdo this, we run the risk of getting shot down.
Listen, guys, if we're looking at 68 acres with a total multifamily capacity of 1,021, like as of right. So I mean, I don't know how much more you need there, but that's the way I look at it. It might be the way other people look at it.
I feel like we should, I mean, I haven't quite formulated my opinions yet. I feel like, we really need to hear from the public, and I'm looking forward to the next few months so we can do that. What I will say is that I do think that the town has done a really good job of identifying 3 places where, should this overlay be put in place, it's not going to change the character of the town because of the nature of the sites already. And I think Easton is very lucky that that's the situation that it's in compared to other communities. And I also just don't want to dismiss the target site, because if we're talking about high quality living, I think the target site with additional multifamily housing in the future would be a great place for it, given all the amenities that are already there too. So I wouldn't like to see any of these options dismissed yet, certainly since we haven't really heard a lot from the public yet either.
Yeah, cool, thanks. Yeah, and we've already done a lot, right, with under our own zoning and with special permits. And so that's why we actually, we chose areas where we already allowed multifamily by special permit, not as of right. But and some certain developments had gone into a certain extent in those zones. So yeah, that's really where we got from here. So it looks like did anyone else want to comment before I see an attendee has a hand raised?
No, I have a question for Stephanie. Are these numbers final, well calculated? We are seeing on the table?
I'm sorry, what numbers final, Amos?
The one on the table, the 68 and 1,021, 28, 479.
Well, as Peter mentioned, that's the total acreage as the potential districts are shown on the maps currently.
Yeah, and those are real.
Yeah, are those like hard numbers we could give to the state right now if we had to, if we wanted to?
Okay, so
yeah, I mean,
right.
I think the
so
answer is
have-
yes, if you mean, I mean, if this is what the
Mhm.
the town decided on any one of these
Yeah.
districts as they currently are proposed or being considered, those would be, and that's the multi-unit capacity that we've calculated using the compliance model.
So theoretically, you take the two, the Washington Belmont and the Washington North, together you comply, right?
Right, you could. I don't know that Washington North in particular would meet, again, the goals of the walkable neighborhood, that is, you know, a place people want to live. I like the way Bob said that, you know, at the last meeting, that you have a walkable neighborhood with amenities and services. You have open space that's in close proximity, and it's a place that people really want to live.
Well, I think the other thing that should be said, I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder on this, Peter, but you know, that whole corridor, you know, including the project that we saw earlier, but also, you know, any kind of development that happens as a result of this new zoning is going to take time. And alongside of that, you know, there's going to be that modernization effort on Foundry. You're going to have, you know, you're going to have that light at Pequannock. You know, there's a lot of real potential on that corridor. So, you know, I agree that we should really continue to focus some attention on that target area, because this MBTA Communities Act does present, you know, some potential for us to really push forward some of the goals of the community, that walkable neighborhood feel. I really believe that.
Cool, thanks.
I was just trying to figure out the number. So if you take the first one and reduce some of the total acreage, it will reduce the number of units.
Right.
To accommodate not too much excess from what the state is requesting us to do.
Well, and that's, so again, we've run the models. However, until the state runs it through, we don't really know the final number. So if that was your question, is when you say the final numbers, like if you're talking about the multifamily unit capacity, we believe these are solid numbers, but again, if you have to hit 913 and you take away several of the parcels and the acreage is reduced, I don't know what that's going to do to your total number. If you're just looking at trying to just go move forward with one district that you think can hit that. I think we're really pretty comfortable that the way it is shown, again, I'm using the word potential because it's not finalized, but the way it's drawn today, we're pretty comfortable that you would at least hit the 913.
Right. No, well, these are good options to talk about with our group, because if you think about it, there's like 5 or 6 permutations of options here. If you're looking for 900 or something, units, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have some except that, no, actually Washington meets the minimum acreage for the large one. So that actually, yeah, it does. It gives us lots,
right,
5 or 6 options.
So maybe,
right, but and that was adding in. You'll recall that originally we didn't
Once we added
include that larger parcel, and that was added in.
So maybe 3 is too much flexibility and too much excess units. Maybe 2, as Bob mentioned, is maybe something we should work on. We have received some feedback. I say this loosely, but there are some people that are concerned that, and by the way, nothing is going to be built and developed immediately, and that is clear to everyone, but ultimately it will be, and there are concerns about traffic and all kind of things that can happen before there are mitigations to traffic. So, so having two areas to spread the load in general, and being the two areas good for the other objective, I think it makes sense to focus on the first two, one here and on the table, and maybe leave Washington North for now on the table, so we can have some more option to show to the public when we talk to them. But I don't know what we want to present to the state on November, and I'm debating with myself, and I think maybe just the two first one.
Yeah, let's bring Dale has his hand raised. Let's
Yeah,
let's
could
see what
I
he
just
thinks.
make one?
Yeah, just as Mickey mentioned, it does get a little bit late, and we might have better ideas if we stay fresh here. But go ahead, Stephanie.
Just quickly, I'm Amas, I like what you just said, because I think you want to go out to the public with something. I mean, we still haven't even tapped public comment and input in this process. And I think that going out and really hearing what people have to say and what their concerns might be and what their thoughts might be, and would really encourage everyone on the board to make sure that you're letting people know when the public hearings and meetings are happening and encouraging them to participate.
Okay, on that note, first person with a hand raised is Dale Carister.
Hi, Dale Carister, 21 South Street. Not to get too personal on this, but I'm very much in favor of generally increasing diversity of housing and so forth. Having gone through a divorce, I lived in 5 different places in 7 years, along with my 2 sons, including a 2-room in-law apartment, 2 different duplexes that were, one was 1 bedroom, the other was 2 bedroom, and so forth. So I'm very much in favor of additional diversity of housing, having lived this in a very personal way. I'd also like for my boys ultimately to find places where they could live in town. That being said, I'm all about fairness and equity in this, and I would never vote for something to, for example, to try to put all 50 acres up, whether it be Belmont or whether it be in the Roach Brothers area. I personally think that what makes the most sense is to have 3 districts spread it out around town. It's sort of, you have someone in the central area, the northern area, the southern area. It makes a lot of sense to spread it out. I think you are going to run into a problem if you try to provide for substantially in excess of what the state requirement is, that folks may very well vote it down. And again, I'm in favor of other diversity of housing options, like you've done with additional density in the 5 Corners area and what you've done in the Eastman District before considering this. And on the issue of character and so forth, as Amos had mentioned, we already have 290 some units from Avalon that in fact have substantially changed the character in the sense of the traffic in the area. So again, my practical request would be that the board actually consider trimming down the Eastman District, whether it be 25, 30, or 35 acres, but rather than the 68, and then consider the 3 different options going forward. So that would be my request.
Okay, thank you. Well, is that a good start and some good prelude for next week? You want to talk about more here?
It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Yeah, we should give ourselves a pat on the back there for getting to 9 o'clock here. Moving on from that. Okay. So thanks everyone. All right, and we have a couple other items here. So I think Amos has hit the nail on the head there. Let's go right to the agenda. Thanks everyone for coming in for that one. There's a lot more to come. We have a zoning board of appeals.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, do we need a vote to continue the public hearing?
Oh yeah, let's continue that to the next meeting.
Motion to continue a public hearing, MBTA zoning.
Actually, it's kind of we're posting it as a public meeting under the hearing, so it would probably be October 11th.
October 11.
Okay.
The info session is,
I don't know, that,
It will be if we all, if three of us.
well,
are
we're
there.
posting it as a public hearing
Yeah.
because we're assuming that board members are
If
all.
three of us show up and act in the capacity of a planning,
Yeah.
planning and zoning board member.
But I don't know if it's a public information session, so.
So let's continue it to, do we want to open a public hearing right yet? We say continue to possibly the 11th and otherwise the next meeting.
seconded Stetson.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a suggestion.
Mhm.
What does the board think about, I think we have to continue to, hold on a minute. So what if you continued it to February, which would be the closing date? And then, no, I forget it. I think it gets too messy. We'll figure that
Yeah,
out.
I think well, this.
This idea, the thought was to
Yeah,
just
yeah.
continue it openly, but I think that,
Yes, I think continue to be determined date.
Okay, yeah, we just continue. We're going to continue to next week if needed, and otherwise it's at the next regularly scheduled planning zoning board member. There's a motion on the floor to.
yeah, that, we don't want to have to
discuss
get
that.
into having to renotice with the
Mhm.
legal notices on it. So,
Yeah. Okay, so all in favor of that motion to continue made by Robert? Robert, are you in favor of that?
Aye.
Oh, was there a second though?
Actually, I was the second. It was Amos.
Oh, you're the second. Okay, no, man, sorry. Mickey.
Yeah,
Okay, Amos.
continue to the 11 or to be determined.
Okay, sounds like you're in favor of that. Okay, Joanne?
Yes,
Okay, and Kathy?
Aye.
Okay, that was a mix of last names and first names. Sorry about that. So now we can get back to the agenda and go to special permit 785 Washington Street. This is a ZBA request for comment. So we don't really approve or deny anything if we review what is going to go before the zoning board of appeals. And if we have an opinion, we can say we recommend or we don't recommend or no comment, and we can add a few other comments. So this is, if everyone looked at this one, so Stephanie, is this actually the kennel is moving to an adjacent property, like discontinuing at one
yes,
location?
they're moving to the
moving-
Evolution.
one?
They're next door to what was Evolution.
Okay, and
It's
so they're,
classy canines.
and they're moving, yep, and it's a commercial district. It's just that kennels are not allowed, require a special permit from the Board of Appeals, no matter where they are.
Yeah. And I was looking at this, Suzanne and I were looking at this and, there's some information that seems to be missing from the application and the plan. It doesn't show outdoor play area or where the toileting areas are for the dogs or how many dogs will be on site at any one time. So, not that those can't be overcome, but that information wasn't available.
What's behind that? Is that the condos aren't behind there too, are they? They're more like behind, like,
I know there's a wetland system behind, like
Okay.
right behind Evolution.
yeah. I mean, I guess I'd say I'm in favor of I'd recommend the concept. Without doing like a full site plan review without, the applicant. Does anyone else have any feelings about that?
I didn't have a chance to look at the kind of the location. What's around it? Is this all commercial?
So there is, I'm looking at it
138.
right now. Let me, do you want me to share?
Are you able to share that real quick?
Yep, hold on.
Yeah, it's commercial. There is
I don't have the, there we go. So this is where they're moving.
mix.
This is where they're currently located. Oh, wait a minute, you can't see.
Yeah, you're not sharing it.
I'm not, I pulled it up, but I didn't. Okay, so this is where they're currently located. This is where they're proposing moving. This is stream.
So
that
those are the
goes
condos.
here.
Yeah, those are the condos behind them, behind
Yep.
there. So,
Yep. And then you have commercial, this was Edwards Movers
Mhm.
across the street.
The barber shop on one side there.
There's a barber shop.
Yeah,
Yeah, I seem to, now that you mention it, yes.
but really the only residential is that the condos, which are pretty close.
Yeah,
A little bit across the street, but then and farther up towards Depot.
yep.
Well, getting towards Depot, there's, but I mean, the condos are obviously right there. That's like really the big one.
Hmm.
So,
And the wetlands, they're not gonna, this, like, subject to
I-
the wetlands, right? Like,
so
no, could it be?
you see, Noonan, Noonan is called? No, Noonan. That company that is abutting that place is a construction company. Yeah, and that smaller building there, the smaller building where you just point, in the smaller one, south, no.
oh, south, wait a minute.
That is the current place of that kennel.
That's where they're located. Oh, you're right. That's the, yes, you're correct.
So they are located there. I don't know how many dogs you can put there, but I don't know how many more customers they're going to have, but that is.
Well, yeah, that's a
place.
good point, is that I don't think the letter that accompanied this doesn't actually tell too much about the operations, does it? Did anyone memorize that letter?
I don't remember seeing, I guess my thing is I kind of don't have enough information to make a decision, because a lot of it's lacking. They said up to 200 dogs, but all of
Okay,
it at
yeah.
different times, like
Mhm.
it just doesn't quite explain it.
Mhm.
Right. It says 200 during daycare and grooming activity. So, but that doesn't, they don't talk about how many dogs would be on site overnight or kenneled.
Yeah.
Stephanie, this would come back to this board once it goes through
Yes,
zoning
it would
and
be subject to site
wetlands.
plan review by the
Yeah.
planning board. So thank you, Joanne. It's been a long night. That was one of the points I was going to point out, that it does. So
Yeah.
the planning board, I
We
mean,
we can recommend and put as a condition that we want to review the site plan.
or just, or if you're inclined, you could say, you know, we're kind of abstaining from an opinion, and if it gets approved by the Board of Appeals, you would have an opportunity to review it.
I think I'd be more comfortable with that just based on the lack of information. I couldn't make a decision one way or another because I just don't have the information.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm with Mickey on that. I'm not opposed to the concept. The concept is fine, but we just don't have any information to really determine any more than that, I don't think.
Yep. Sounds pretty good to
Yeah,
me.
what information we are asking to provide?
The hours of operation, how many dogs are on site overnight,
The play area where they would be
Yep.
toileting,
screening, yep, parking,
screening the barking. So
Parking and
noise
barking.
mitigation.
yep, parking and barking. Waste, practices, things like that, the usual kennel things. Just like things that we would ask, that we would probably ask when we have the site plan review. We just don't have that information all in the what has been submitted for this up to now in permitized for to the ZBA. Well, in that case, it would be some type of it would be no comment. I don't want to say no comment. Or we can just say no comment, or we can say no comment because additional information might be required. Mickey, I think you worded it better.
Could we just say no comment based on information provided? Just because
Mhm.
there's not enough, or I'm not sure how to word it.
No, I think that's sort of what we usually say.
Okay,
Right? Is that a
yeah,
motion?
make that motion.
Okay.
Move to
Mhm.
no comment. I'm not sure how to do
Yeah,
that one.
that's good. That's good enough.
Okay,
Zigman, I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, Wolf?
yes, I,
Yep, Zigman,
Yes.
Kid,
I need to abstain because I am a customer.
Ryan,
okay.
Okay.
All right, Kid,
Yeah, yes for me.
yeah, that's a,
Yes.
and Deshane, aye. Okay, Amos, are you abstaining
Yeah.
for the record? All right, well, thank you for contributing to that. Okay, that's done. One more, this is an easier one, I think. It was Fernandes, the hardware store on Depot Street, wants to add a still sign to their signboard. But the zoning bylaw only allows so many signs per lot, and they already have more than they're supposed to in the first place, I think.
They're,
So,
yes,
another
and
one.
they're actually they're adding the
Yeah.
Ace Handyman Services and then the steel sign.
But I kind of like, I think it all sort of fits and it looks kind of part of one sign, and I don't know, I've always liked those still signs for some reason, but that's not a good reason to just, give a quick approval here. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
Fine. Recommend.
you all sorry?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Yep, recommend.
Recommend.
Yeah, motion to recommend, Wolf, sorry.
Kadam second.
Okay, all in favor, Kid?
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Tatum,
Aye.
Zigman,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Okay, Deshane, aye.
Can I ask, do we have to go back and the one where the gentleman dropped off, do we just continue that one? Cause he's never came back, the one with
Yeah.
the.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I was gonna check in and I don't think he's
Well,
coming.
that, I mean, I thought that's what the board basically said, if he didn't
Yeah.
come back
Mhm.
on, and
Yeah.
I'll let him know what the
Yep.
questions of the board
Yeah,
are.
it
he
was
needs
kind of
to
sort of
address.
informal in the first place that we don't really have to continue, but great,
Yeah.
good question. So anything else? Any minutes to
Minutes are good for me.
vote on? That's motion there from Amos,
Second, Wolf.
seconded by Wolf. All in favor? Kadam,
Aye.
Stetson,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Kid.
Aye.
Zigman.
Aye.
And Deshane, aye. I try to move around and I kind of lost track of where I was on that one, so that's what I paused and left.
I hope the chair doesn't have any reports.
No, I don't have anything to report except that the only thing that I have to report is that if you eat some chicken wings at 2:30 and think it's going to cover you all the way through 9:30, then it's not true. Don't believe them. So, anything else?
It's not a report, that's a
Yeah.
repeat.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. It's a little more fun with everyone here. So nice,
A motion to adjourn?
nice to meet you. And
Second,
Second,
Stetson.
aye.
I can't hear you anymore, so, all in favor? Deshane, aye. Stetson.
Good
Aye.
night, everybody.
Zigman.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good.
Aye.
And welcome,
Thanks.
and welcome to Kathy.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.